are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
Oh, I am doing fantastic, Blake. It was a really good week 4 that we had. It was not anything too raucous or crazy because I felt like a lot of the outcomes that happened were expected, but it was a pretty solid week 4. A nice appetizer for what we're getting next week.
Very much so. I think we learned the most this week, potentially, about 3 teams, 3 out of the state, or 4 teams, 3 out of the state of Florida and 1 out of the state of Louisiana. Joe, a lot of people was wondering if LSU just had a fumble against Florida. That defense gave Miami issues, a lot of issues. 5 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. That game is a 6-point game. Florida, Billy Napier is wasting away one of the really good defenses in the SEC in college football, and I think we learned a lot there. Boy, he did not let DJ Lagway do much last night, so we'll definitely talk about that. But yes, a great week coming off what will be probably one of the biggest weeks of the year on September 27th.
Yeah, and I think that, as you said there, this was a really big week for us learning which teams were legit. And not only for the games and the outcomes that happened, but some of these other performances maybe vindicated how quality some teams were. And I think 2 teams that we'll end up getting to today, Indiana, Texas Tech, both needed to prove after they had really light opening schedules that they were going to live up to the preseason hype that some put on them. And especially us on this show, we both hyped up Indiana and Texas Tech to a pretty big degree. Me a little more aggressively on Indiana. And they both proved it. They both proved it in a very defiant and explosive, very explosive way.
Yeah, I mean, people look at Texas Tech as an example and don't think of the defense. They think of air raid and offense, but that defense absolutely made some stellar plays. Holy Indiana. Good Lord.
Who would have thought that they would have gotten better from last year? Who would have thought?
Well, okay, there are a couple things. You were right. We were texting off show this morning. In Illinois lost 4 DBs, 4 corners during the game. I think that's a massive issue. But Luke Altmaier, God bless his soul. Joe, he got sacked 4 times in 2 drives in the first half. I mean, good Lord. Indiana might have gotten a lot better. And I have the hottest take about Indiana in the country that I'm willing to share here tonight. They have the most physical wide receiver room I've seen all year.
Oh, that's without a doubt. They might have one of the best wide receiver tandems in the country.
I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there because I ain't going to go there yet. Jeremiah Smith and Cornell Tate still exist.
Oh, I'm not saying that they're the best, but I would put them top 5.
They are really good. Waffle House is always wide open.
Mm-hmm.
Great nickname. But God bless it, they're physical. And Illinois just got punched in the mouth. And so we'll talk about that. No, by the way, Auburn.
I don't know if I'm being completely honest with you. And I think that there's going to be a lot of incorrect reactions, I think, to the Auburn-Oklahoma game. I don't think Auburn's bad. I don't think Auburn's a bad team, Blake. And you said that to me pre-show. I think that they had a couple of really egregious mistakes that cost them in a game that they lost by 7 points on the road.
Which
they were there. They were there.
The SEC announced that the first Satania touchdown shouldn't have stood. And I thought the Satania screen, I think that's a catch and fumble. You can't catch the ball.
I did too.
Make a move. Oh, he's not bobbling it. He's tucking it. You consider that a football move. Auburn got a little screwed, but here's the thing. You got to hit Cam Coleman. Well, the only reason I only say a little. You missed Cam Coleman open in the end zone twice.
That's fair.
You could have, with all those issues, hey, Cobb had a 45-yard run, and then you didn't run the ball with him the rest of the game.
Right. It was a lot of self-inflicted issues. And it kind of makes me wonder. I know that this is something that Oklahoma fans don't want to hear. I haven't paid much attention to what any Oklahoma comments are because they didn't do what a lot of fans usually do on our segments when we post them, where when we're wrong about something, they all funnel in to say like, haha, you were wrong about X, Y, and Z. I haven't seen them going and commenting. I would think that most of them understand that they got out of that game with a lot of luck on their side. You named two. I think that we also got to recognize the PI call that was missed on Cam Coleman, where he was tackled before he was able to readjust to the football. And then, oh my God, there was another one that I'm completely blanking on that was also missed. There were at least 4 calls that could have completely changed that game in a 7-point game.
Yeah, the sack on one of the 10 sacks on Jackson Arnold was head almost gets ripped off by a face mask. I mean, like, but you can't field the punt inside your own 2 and then go back in the end zone and then come out.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Like, again, it's a lot of the punt. Joe, kick the football. Like, don't get scared. You special teams guys get scared, boy. I'm telling you.
Hey, I'm not the same as a kick returner. We have a much different mentality.
I get that. All right. But Nebraska and Michigan we'll talk about as well. Sam Pittman, Billy Napier, Dabo Sweeney, are they all on the hot seat? If we have time, we'll get to that as well here tonight. Everyone do us a favor. Hit the like and share to all those groups. If you're on Facebook, it's all those social media pages. You're watching us, listening to us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, notification bell, wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. Only a couple away from hitting that 20,000 sub mark. Do us a favor if you don't mind. Send this show to your buddies. Say, hey, look at these buffoons trying to talk college football, or say maybe they're pretty good at what they do. Just do us a favor. Send 10 of your buddies, one of your buddies. Tell them to subscribe. It doesn't do anything for you, but it greatly helps Joe and I if you hit that subscribe button. All right, let's get moving here. Joe, every episode is brought to you by, and every Ruffino and Joe show and segment is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Go over to FanDuel.com today and sign up. Got some discretionary money. Go over there. I did it yesterday. Live bet Oklahoma because I never thought that Auburn was going to be able to pull it out. It's the most Auburn thing of all time, but you can go over to FanDuel and do that. Any questions, go to FanDuel.com/RG for more details. But every Ruffino and Joe show is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Joe, let's get moving here. Miami and Florida last night in what was, I thought, a really good defensive game, a really fun game. I know a lot of people didn't see it that way, but a lot of hard hitting, a lot of really good defense displayed by both of those teams. But Miami able to hold on, able to get a couple of late scores with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They wind up winning 26-7. When you recap and you look at that Miami and Florida game, how did you see it playing out?
Blake, there was one statement that I had this week, and I've been pushing a little bit more aggressively. And I felt like it was really vindicated for a reason that many people wouldn't suspect. I said that I believed that Miami was the most balanced team in college football. And I think a lot of people assume when you make a statement like that, Blake, it just means they're always going to win in every area. I see that as meaning, Blake, that when certain parts of your game are struggling, other areas will step up to the plate. What I mean by this, and in this game against Florida, it's a wet game. Center's having a little bit of issues. They can't throw the ball the same way that they usually can. Carson Beck wasn't awful, but didn't have his best game so far this year. And despite this, Blake, their defense steps up and the run game takes over. Balanced teams will have guys on the roster understand that they need to play above their normal level of performance, and they will excel. We saw that from Ruben Bain. We saw that from Marty Brown. We saw that from so many guys on that defense that needed to swarm to the football. Like the last part with this, and in line with that, it gets me so fired up seeing this Miami defense doing what they do, where every single time somebody's tackled, there's 5, 6, as many Miami defenders as there possibly could be swarming to the football. Teams
Ruben
like that,
Bain, my God,
go far, Blake. They go far because it means they care. It means they are motivated. It means they want to do the little things right. So, Blake, that continues to stand out to me. I am still impressed by this Miami team, despite them not playing one of their cleaner games.
I thought we learned a lot about Florida more than we learned about Miami. And let me explain. Florida lost to South Florida, and we were in a situation where we saw Florida take on LSU the previous week, a top 3 team. They go back on the road and face another top 5 opponent in Miami. And, Joe, the real question was, we kind of understood offensively they had been struggling, right? DJ last night only had 2.7 yards per completion. I mean, like, they really took everything out of his hands. Joe, that game was a 13-7 game with 5 minutes left to go. I mean, defensively, they have not given up with their best player being out. But you bring up this Miami defense, and in the second half, I thought Heatherman did and pulled what really I thought Blake Baker and LSU did in the first half or in the second half last week. Hey, we're going to show you and run a lot of things in the first half, and when we run those things, we're going to start bailing out in the second half. Show one thing, run another. I thought Heatherman and Blake Baker, arguably right now the best 2 DCs in the country, really gave Florida a lot of fits in a lot of different ways. But I look at what this game kind of came down to. It was a tough and physical football game. I still don't understand how Jaden Ball's only getting 12 touches and 12 carries throughout the game. They were one-dimensional. And to their credit, this defense for Florida played it close. But this was between two teams and 2 game plans. I know it's in the rain, but not the whole game was in the weather. Joe, they try to be very physical on both lines of scrimmage. But you bring up that Miami defense, and there's one statistic that just stands out above the rest. It's not about just flying to the football. Joe, Florida went 0 of 13 on third down. 0 of 13. That means the level of execution that Miami had defensively is light years ahead of where they were a season ago. Now, Joe, I do feel like Florida was way too one-dimensional. Lagway threw 5 interceptions last night, and they did not put him in any kind of constraints whatsoever. How many times on third down, I actually know this number, how many times on third down are you going to hand the ball off to Jackson or Ball and just say, pray, please God, get a first down? They didn't. I get what happened to Lagway a week ago, but Joe, you can't take the ball out of his hands when you're down 6 on the road on 3rd and 2nd. You cannot do it. They went for it on multiple 4th downs, and I get it, but Lagway has got to be able to convert those situations. Miami did exactly what they needed to do. They took what is a one-dimensional team because Lagway struggled the way that he was last week, and they physically dominated. 0 for 13. Billy Napier continues to get outclassed and outcoached. And that is what you're going to continue to see with this Florida team offensively. But I walk away from this and saying, look, Florida, you kept another game very close with a top 10 opponent. You did. A top 5 opponent. You did. But, Joe, this team offensively doesn't have a pulse. Billy Napier should Monday morning should have more questions than anybody. I get Lagway through 5 picks. Joe, you're on the road on 4th down, and you're literally on your side of the 50, and I'm asking the question, throw the ball. Like, what are we doing? I mean, I know I'm kind of harping on this, but you're down 6. You're down 6 points with a chance to go in and get points here. What are we doing? So, look, I don't want to take anything away from Miami. That defense, Ruben Bain, we kind of prefaced this last week, Joe. He might be the best player in college football, just non-position, like calling it like it is. He probably is. But, man, it just every time I felt like they kept trying to ram their head up against the wall when it was a really tough battle between Miami and Florida.
Right. I want to continue the Miami conversation, but I just want to
let's do
the Florida. No. Well, the Florida stuff I want to just address very quickly here before because the whole hype up here is that we're excited about Miami. Florida's probably out of the playoff picture already this early on in the season. Right. It's going to take a miraculous turnaround to go 9-0 in the next 9 games in order for them to, or not 9-0, 8-0 or whatever, to finish 9-3. But Blake, I think that one thing that was really accentuated and stood out to me that hasn't really been talked about enough until now is that it hasn't really made sense for Billy Napier to have been the play caller. It just didn't. And it leaked into so many different areas that affected this team in the past, where you've got guys wearing the same jersey on the field at the same time, because he's not overseeing, he's not focusing on the small details of the way that this team is supposed to be operating. And I think it worked its way all the way over to here into this game where, as you mentioned, the 5 interceptions from a week ago, you're allowing for that to dictate your decision-making offensively. You're being way too timid. You're being way too careful. You're not really attacking downfield despite having this gifted quarterback. The worst thing that you can do is when a kid plays bad to make him feel like he has to reel it in. I think that was a complete misfire by them.
Agreed.
The fact that they didn't come into this season, Blake, with a new offensive coordinator, with a singular offensive-minded play caller to take over this team is going to be the misfire that is costing Billy Napier his job. That is why he loses his job. This game is the firmest example of that, as you said there, the more detail-oriented team that was very deliberate about having the right guys to win in the right situations, it accentuated what their problems were because the mirror image was Miami, who did almost everything right.
All right. In reference to Miami, here's what I'd say. Defensively, you were a masterclass. I mean, you gave up the 1 touchdown drive in the third quarter where, Florida leaned on you. And you couldn't really get a lot of things going offensively, and that's completely fine. And Florida got a touchdown because they have a really good running back and some really good players. That defense is by far changed in the back end that gives this front seven the ability to be as aggressive and be as good as they need to be. And really, Joe, when we talk about Florida, just for argument's sake, with Heatherman and with Baker, being better on the back end has been giving them the opportunity to be as aggressive as they have been. That's number one. And they both have been. But offensively, I'm not taking anything away from Miami because the biggest lie in college football right now is that Florida's not good defensively. They're very good defensively.
Yeah, it's so not true. Not true.
It's just not true that, they're 1-3 because offensively they stink. Joe, they got NFL guys all over that defense. That's a good team. But here's the thing. You found a way to win by getting 24 carries by Fletcher, 18 by Marty Brown. And Marty Brown did, and Joe, to be real with you, there were 2 plays that I thought he scored on. They blew the whistle early on one of them.
Yeah.
It is what it is. He was their leading receiver. I mean, Marty Brown had 22 touches and Joe well over 130 yards. So their running back room, they were able to lean on when the weather maybe not have given them the ability. And look, Carson Beck missed some big throws, I thought. But this was a team that had seen him a lot. The Carmani McClain interception, he got baited. That's going to happen. But in a season, when you make a playoff, in a season, Joe, when you make a run, you got to be able to win games multiple ways. And you're up 13-7 with 5 minutes left to go, and Marty Brown is the bell cow to end it. And Joe, we talked about the Marty Brown addition when he was coming into Miami. You put up 13 points in the fourth quarter to end it. But I thought that offensive line and both lines of scrimmage, after how well you've recruited for Miami, is starting to become the difference. Joe, I think when we look at the portal era, what we're starting to see here is that we expect teams to be better maybe a little bit earlier than they should. And this is the third year of the great classes that Mario has started to bring in. Joe, look at that offensive line. Look at that defensive line. They leaned on a really, really good Florida front. And that's what was able to propel them. And guess what? Carson Beck didn't have to be Superman. Remember the whole thing that Carson Beck said in the preseason? I felt like I had to be Superman. Well, last night he didn't against a really good team. It's just all around, and I think you brought this up on Wednesday. Miami, if you get in a fight with Miami, they can do so many different things to overcome. You better not get in a phone booth fight with them up front because they're going to continue to propel, and they're going to continue to win those. I just think you were right what you said on Wednesday, to give you credit for it. I think that they are showing that you're welcome. I think that they're starting to show that they are complete in so many different areas. So what? Through the passing game, they didn't look good. By the way, your receivers can't. I don't care that it's raining. You can't have that many drops. You cannot. But flush that. You're able to win a dogfight at home against a rival, and you look really good doing it. And you deserve to be a top 3 team in the country right now.
Right. So the one part with this that you said that I want to emphasize is that you talked about how the defense that Florida has is going to get completely ignored in this situation. I think that that's the further evidence for why I really like this Miami team is that they were challenged. They were legitimately very challenged. Florida didn't have Caleb Banks, but that secondary that Florida has is a lot better than people give it credit for. The ball that Carson Beck threw didn't have great velocity on it. I think that his elbow is still slowly getting back to normal. It didn't have the same level of zip, but I don't blame Carson Beck for that. They showed the wide angle, and when you watch the film, it was a tight window that he tried to challenge. Cormani McLean's just that freakish of an athlete. This is a guy who was a former 5-star.
Got written off way too soon.
Yes. Very highly recruited kid for a reason because he can break on a pass like that. He's got the length to do that. Not many corners in college football are going to make a play on that ball. So I don't really put that on Carson Beck for making that mistake. That is not a Georgia Carson Beck interception. That is a new version of him trying to challenge a gap, trying to get into a rhythm, trying to create a play, and it just didn't go his way.
Well, they're in zone, and Carmani comes off of it. Joe, that's what 5-star DBs do.
Yes, just to react and then have the length, the size 100%. To break on a ball. But 100%. the biggest part that I want to harp on to round out this segment, Blake, is that it is the true definition for a championship caliber team is that, again, when something isn't working, that they're able to turn to a different path to find a way to win. If you had true weaknesses, if you had a true weakness, it would get exposed. Right. It would have gotten exposed. And that's the stake for Florida here. Their true weakness is that they're having trouble throwing the ball right now. And it really looked bad because they couldn't throw the ball. It looked as bad as it possibly could. I don't think that's the case for Miami, that they've got some sort of true Achilles heel that is going to tank them like last year. They have shown to me amazing balance through these first 4 weeks.
The only thing I'm going to say here is outside of Tony, I do wonder about their explosiveness at wide receiver because CJ Daniels, Lofton, I thought looked good. The tight end, he's going to be a good player. Mm-hmm. There are going to be teams like, let me give an example. When you get in, it might not hurt you in the regular season. I don't think it's going to hurt them in the regular season at all. You get into the playoff, you can't always do that against Ohio State, right? Like you can't always do that against these better teams that, quite frankly, Joe, I'm just going to call it like I see. You can't bully everybody. You can try, but you're not there yet. Let's get through the regular season. But if you get it, this is the thing that a lot of things can be true before we move on here. Billy, with all due respect, if you don't trust in DJ Lagway at all to do what you did last night, then pull him. I'm
not their backup even. I don't even.
Well, here's the thing, Joe. I don't give two Rudy Poos if the kid throws 20 interceptions this year. I really don't. I really don't. Because here's the thing. He's got the athletic ability to be very good, and we all know that. By the way, hey, we scored a touchdown. Well, what happened in the 3 plays before ball scored? DJ ran. I mean, like, what are we doing here? Joe, them limiting him the way that they did is malpractice. If you don't trust him, you can't be one-dimensional both weeks against a top 5 team on the road and win. And I thought LSU and Miami both showed, Joe, I got to be real with you, they're the best 2 defenses in the country right now, by far. And
yeah, I agree.
So much depth and was so wild. Hey, hold on. They were 2 of the worst last year. And that is the funniest shit about all of this. Both of them had really bad secondaries. They went and spent a lot of money. Now look at them. So really good situations. All right. Joe, Texas Tech, our Red Raiders went up to Utah and got a dub 34-10. And quite honestly, a complete domination for the Red Raiders. when you look and go back and look at this game, how do you see it? How did you see it in the recap?
Well, first of all, this was a really good week for vindicating us. It was a really good week for really establishing some of these takes that we've been building up on these teams that we've been excited about.
Bullish on Texas Tech. We've been so bullish.
I thought that there were two things that finally came to fruition. We were given a lot of evidence that they have speed all over this roster. They have speed at receiver. They have speed at running back. They've got speed on defense. We talked about in the preview going into the Utah game that they were one of the most explosive teams in the country. They just hadn't played anyone. So now you go up against a typically well-coached Utah defense, and you're able to get the explosives that you need to win that game. The other thing that I think really came to fruition, their offensive line was super sturdy and reliable, and their defensive line was fast and physical. I think that where this Texas Tech team is going to start to separate themselves from the rest of the Big 12, Blake, is that they have bodies along the lines of scrimmage that you typically see in the Big 10 and the SEC. That's what needs to be recognized. That is something that I think a lot of people this preseason were saying, is the portal class legit? Is this just another group of guys that they brought in? Is this just a bunch of paid assassins that they bring in and maybe they won't gel together? They're gelling at the current moment, and they're doing it at a very, very high level. Like, the most important part about this conversation, that Utah team is not bad. What Texas Tech just did is so impressive. To go on the road into one of the loudest stadiums in the country, in one of the hardest places to play, if not the hardest place to play in the Big 12, lose your starting quarterback during this game, freshman Will Hammond comes in, and you still win the ball game by multiple scores. That is why I am backing Texas Tech big time to continue as my team that I think wins the Big 12.
Well, Joe, not only that, they scored 24 points in the fourth quarter with Will Hammond.
Yeah, dude.
Right?
Yeah, dude.
And it wasn't just that. Because listen, it's easy to box score watch. Now stay with me here. Morton threw 2 interceptions. The back shoulder throw that got knocked up in the air because his receiver didn't come down with it, and it goes up in the air and it gets picked. Then the strip away by the safety from Utah. Yeah. Joe, that's not I'm sorry.
Good defensive plays, but those are not I don't put those really on Morton. I don't.
I don't either.
You got great throws, but they're not totally his fault.
No, they're not. They're not. To be honest with you, the one that got stripped away. That come on, I mean, come on. The one that bounced in the air. I mean, the only reason I'd give him that when you did throw it into double coverage, and that's what happens, right? That is what's going to happen when you throw into double coverage. But Joe, here's the thing, though. We can talk about how explosive they are offensively, but you hit the nail on the head. They ran the ball for 173 yards, Texas Tech. And not only that, on the inverse, they only allowed Utah 101 rushing yards on 31 attempts. Napier ran 11 times. Rogers ran 10 times. Parker ran 6 times. Oh, and by the way, there was 5 turnovers in the first quarter. And I hate to say it like this. I think in the first half, they played a C- to C game. This isn't even – the first half wasn't even close to what Texas Tech can be. But, Joe, they leaned on them in the second half. Field position happened in the third quarter. It was what it was. They exploded in the fourth. And they dominated on both lines of scrimmage. Joe, I've never seen this Texas Tech team look this good up front. Whether it's the years all the way back when you had Mike Leach with Crabtree and the boys, when they're playing in Cotton Bowls versus Ole Miss, they've never been this physical. And they took, with all due respect, Joe, I thought that they took 2 offensive linemen for Utah. As you talked about this, a lot of people have projected in let's just say top 2 rounds for argument's sake. They couldn't run the ball. They could not move the ball. Napier made some really bad mistakes and some really bad decisions. And, Joe, we had Utah fans in our chat last week talking about, well, Blake, show me the bad throws that he's going to make. He is a turnover machine. And this is what's going to happen against teams with the level of talent. Now, I want to say this. Will Hammond, player of the game. Actually, I got to be real with you. Player of the week in the entirety of college football for me. What Will Hammond did on the road, not only throwing the football, but running the football. 8 rushes, 61 yards, he had a long of 32. Joe, the only bad miss he had all day was the Terrence Carter miss, and then he comes back and hits him a second time for a touchdown. Yeah. That kid is really good. And it's all 3 levels, both offensively and defensively. But, man, I'm just so surprised at how great they ran the football and how willing they were in running the football. The best thing they do, too, is they get their running backs the ball in space and say, go have at it. Cameron Dickey, just phenomenal. Caleb Douglas, by the way, showed up in the second half with the 4 big catches, and I thought him and Hammond had a really good connection. Hey, listen, we're going to get Douglas the football because Hammond has a connection with him. Joe, I just thought it was absolutely phenomenal by Texas Tech, and they absolutely, I hate to say, Joe, they beat down a Utah team that in the first half they did not play a good game at all. They're just really good at all phases of the game right now.
Right. The way that I now look at this, Blake, is like, what more proof do fans or doubters need to see? Go ahead.
That consistency. Because I think when you have a team like this and you have a massive high, Joe, it's like Miami a year ago to some extent. Do you have a letdown any part of this schedule? But make no mistake about it, Joe, this is the most talented team in the Big 12.
Without a doubt. I think that's where my point with that question that I was posing was, yeah, they do need to show that they can string together consistency, because this was their first challenge of the season, and they answered that challenge with an exclamation point. A little bit of a shaky first half. They locked in despite dealing with the adversity of losing their starting quarterback. They were able to finish, and they were able to win by multiple scores. That is what a team does, that if they're capable of accomplishing greatness in a year, is that when they're staring down problems and things are not going their way, they improve. They lock in. They somehow get better. They tighten up. They know what they need to do. I think that with the schedule that they have coming up, it's so favorable for them to go 11-1, maybe even better than that. Blake, I'm going to go ahead and say this. I think that Texas Tech at the current moment is the best team in the state of Texas. I think that defensively they're better than Texas A&M is right now, and I don't think that there's much separation offensively between Texas A&M and Texas Tech. I think Texas A&M is a little bit more speedy and explosive at receiver. Marcel Reed looks good, but there's not enough of a separation for me to think that Texas A&M is so much stronger than Texas Tech. And I'm also going to add to this, the way that they're built in the trenches that we don't typically get with these Big 12 teams, I think that they can win a playoff game this year. I think that there is a real shot that they finish within the top 6 this season, and maybe they knock somebody off. Maybe they go further than that. This is one of the best and most exciting wins that I've had this year from anybody.
I love my Red Raiders.
If they replicate that win, let me put that qualifier on it. If they replicate that performance, that is a team that can win a playoff game.
First off, NBI, the game with Miami was 13-7 with 5 minutes left to go. Don't even come at me with that. But, Joe, there is a way they can get beat. You ready? They had 14 penalties for 122 yards. They've been heavily...
Well, yeah, they had a lot of false starts. That was a big issue.
They had a lot of false starts. They had a lot of penalties in general. 14 for 122.
And they still won, though.
No.
Imagine if they didn't have those 2 picks and they didn't have all those penalties. Yeah.
Well, they still dominated. So, again, when you talk about that's where I was trying to get at. It's twofold. They played a shitty game in the first. Let's just be real. They played shitty in the first half, and they didn't in the second. And that's the point. They got to prove it. I'm not going to go as far with you at the A&M thing, but they right now have shown through going to this game and through Utah, goodness gracious, man, they can be a problem for a lot of teams. I'm not going to go that far yet. I love our Red Raiders, and they've shown us a lot of love.
You're soft.
But no, I just know that when you when you're one of the more heavily penalized teams in the country, you go on the road again in a hostile environment and you do that, you're going to get beat. You can't go in the playoff and do that either against these bigger teams either.
Yeah.
So you need to clean that up. Got to clean that up. All right. Let's move on here. Everyone do us a favor and hit the like and share. Joe, we do have 2 super chats. Do you want to get to them really quickly?
Yeah, let's hit them real quick.
DeBoy Dale with a $5 super chat says, y'all got to talk about that TD the refs cost Miami blowing the whistle. I mean, we talked about it during the segment, but let's get to it here. Joe, that's a really bad whistle.
Yeah, the Marty Brown one was.
Yeah, Marty Brown should have scored.
Yeah. That was it was a weird week for.
Did the ACC, by the way, I did not see this. Did the ACC show the replay or any replay of that? Meaning, the ACC now does where they will let you listen in on any replay. Did they show that at all? Because I did not see that.
I did not notice it. I was live on Bleacher Report with my Notre Dame recap during that specific play, so I did not catch that.
Well,
I watched the entire second half, but I missed like 20 minutes of the game.
From what I understand, they just said his forward progress was stopped, correct? And you can't review.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, and but right, I don't think it's a reviewable play, but it plays into the fact that it was a bad whistle.
Miami got screwed on that one. Marty
Brown's a good player, dude. All those guys are great players. I love that whole running back room, man.
I do too.
Lyle and Fletcher.
They got screwed, but they're not the only one. Hey, at least you didn't get screwed like Auburn did.
Right.
Auburn got massively screwed. Harlan says, I cannot wait to be in Doak when Miami comes to town. Florida State by 7. That might be part 1 of part 2 of the ACC championship game if Georgia Tech can't hold on here.
I mean, for real. That's actually really kind of crazy to think about still with the Georgia Tech scheduling. I don't think Georgia Tech faces either
one of them.
So there's a real shot that the winner of this game, that is what they need to propel themselves into the ACC championship game. And if Georgia Tech stays healthy, then they get there as well. Yeah, it's going to be a weird race in the ACC. It's a very weird race. It's going to be a good game, though. I'm excited for the Florida State match.
Me too. It's going to be a massive game. Marshall Childs with a $5 super chat says, SEC refs have been trashed for years. What is it going to take to fix it? I think Sankey's biggest flaws have been umpiring and refereeing and scheduling. Let's take scheduling out for just a moment. Joe, they massively screwed Auburn. How do you not, like, every touchdown, like, how do you, the Satania, which we'll get to this in a moment, and so Marshall, stay with us. How do you not know that?
Right. And then I believe that they tried to give some sort of an explanation. It is really stupid that was allowed.
Because his feet were moving, that basically you could consider that as a motion receiver. But he was stationary.
That is such a ridiculous mental gymnastic. The only way to justify it is if you use serious mental gymnastics to explain it. I think that they knew that they were wrong and they didn't want to come off as wrong. I think that's how it was. And I'm glad that they issued a correction. That is at least something that they didn't need to do. Sankey should go to the NFL.
I mean, I got to be honest. Is that a loss for Auburn?
Yeah, we can't relitigate a game like that, sadly. So it's still a loss. It's still a loss. Yeah.
All right, one more, then we'll get rolling. Brian says LSU doesn't have a good win. Michigan has the best running back in the country, and that game should be a minimum 30-10 minimum.
Which one? Is he talking about Brian, are you talking about the Michigan-Nebraska game should have been 30-10? I assume that's what he's referring to.
I guess. I mean,
I don't think Justin Haynes is the best running back in the country. I still think it's Jeremiah Love or it's Ahmad Hardy, but I do think that Justin Haynes is a damn good football player.
Well, LSU's got a top-ranked Ole Miss team this week. I mean, you can look, right. If they keep winning, none of that matters. But you can't. Miami's best win can't be Florida, and then you just boost them up.
Right.
I mean, the game was 13-7, literally with 5 minutes left. Like, what are we doing? I will admit, LSU does not have a good run game, so it is what it is. You know who has the best run game in the country?
Who's that?
The Indiana Hoosiers absolutely dominated the University of Illinois last night, Joe, and I got to come out here and say something before you get rolling. I always let you talk about teams and games first, but I got to start this one. I tweeted you this last night. Have you ever seen the movie Happy Gilmore?
I have. I don't remember any of the scenes, though.
Okay. There's a scene in that movie where he goes to his trainer and goes, "You were wrong. I was right. You are smart. I am not. And I am sorry, Indiana." What an outright clapping Frank Mendoza and the boys put on Illinois last night. And God, it was impressive. But Indiana completely smokes Illinois last night.
I don't think anyone could have saw this coming, but some of the things that led to the win being this wide and this lopsided, we brought it up in our preview. It was part of the reason why that segment was labeled "Why Indiana Wins." There was a gap between these two teams in terms of their explosiveness. Indiana is one of the most productive teams in terms of producing explosive plays on offense, and they're one of the most havoc-creating defenses in college football. But just like we talked about Texas Tech, they hadn't played anyone, so we didn't know if it was real or not. It's very real. It's very, very, very real. I don't even think, Blake, this was really an example of, I think it gets classified as Cignetti running up the score on Bielema. One, there were injuries in their secondary, which kind of contributed to this for Illinois. But two, they stopped throwing the ball pretty early. They stopped throwing the ball, and they were just trying to run the game down, and it felt like, and they kept breaking off big runs. They can't help that. Blake, you know what this really just affirmed to me? They have the experience where it matters. They have the instincts needed to be solid on defense. They've got a really underrated secondary, and their receiver room is at least top 5 in the country. Omar Cooper, Elijah Surratt work really well off of one another.
Yeah, you were mad at me because I had Surratt in my top 5 of the best receivers in the Big Ten.
I wasn't mad at you. I just wasn't. I wasn't all the way.
You yelled at me.
No, it was top 5 skill players. I think Surratt's a great player. I don't know if I would still put him in the top 5 skill players in the Big Ten, but still,
they play a game like Waffle House, which means always open. I don't want to hear it from you anymore.
To get back to my point, though, I think what makes them the most dangerous is, one, the fact that they have this 3-deep running back room with Martin, Black, and Hemby, who they all have different skill sets that works off of it. And, dude, I feel so vindicated by Mendoza. He didn't have to really make any crazy hard throws in this game, but he was so efficient.
But the post route that he threw for the 4th touchdown was absolute. Yeah. It's NFL level. Continue. Sorry.
I was going to say is that kid is a first rounder, and I wouldn't be shocked if we're not talking about him in week 10 as a top 5 Heisman guy.
Why don't we do it now?
Well, I would say that he deserves to start being brought up for what he did. 21 of 23 for 5 touchdowns is freaking
insane.
Unheard of.
Joey, he's got more touchdowns in the last 3 weeks than incompletions.
It's nuts.
It is nuts. When I look at Indiana, so there's something I want to bring up, and Indiana fans are going to get pissed at this, but this is the reality. Illinois did have 4 DBs that went down last night, but I don't think it stops the ass whipping that you gave them. Okay. No. So, but it might have stopped. They might have been able to contain it a little bit better. Joe, they got name an aspect of football, and they got dominated in it. Luke Altmaier last night was under more pressure than I've seen him under maybe ever. Indiana had 7 sacks. 7. You look at the first half, and you literally have Landino, you literally have Tucker, all of these guys physically dominating their opponents. And the question that we had coming into this game was, at least my biggest question for Indiana was, well, man, how physical are you? Because you weren't that physical a year ago. Shit. I mean, they just physically dominated in every area. I don't know what to say other than everything that you did, you physically dominated in. Now, you brought up about their wide receiver core. They are the most physical wide receiver core that I've seen right now. And I don't mean most physically gifted, but Joe, how many tackles do they have to break? How many things do they have to do to show how good they are? I mean, listen, they just poured it on every single aspect. This is another week with over 300 yards rushing or close damn near to it. Yeah, they had 312. You talk about Black, you talk about Martin, you talk about Hemby. Joe, Alberto Mendoza got a rush. I mean, like, they're just doing so many great things. Altmaier's ability to try to get out of the pocket and the pressure they put on him, I thought set up everything offensively. Because when you go to the play-by-play and you see 3-and-out punt, 3-and-out punt, 3-and-out punt, 3-and-out punt, Joe, they literally, to start the game, punt, 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 punt. 3 plays, 4 plays, 3 plays, 3 plays, 3 plays, 3 plays. That is as physically dominating of a performance as you're going to see. No. They did nothing. So, again, name an aspect of what Illinois did outside of the Altmaier touchdown. Outside of that, they physically dominated in every area. And so Indiana, just an outright stellar performance. I mean, they're going to be in that contender talk. And Joe, there's just – look, they got to get tested. And I don't think Illinois was the team to test them, unfortunately. But, golly, that was an ass-clapping.
They have a game against Penn State, and they've got a game against Oregon coming up. So they're going to really get to prove themselves. And I'm going to be quite frank here. I don't think they lose both of those games. But if they were to go 10-2, I would feel a game like that will get brought up when we're trying to make a decision on if they fit in the playoff mix or not. It depends on what the remaining teams in the field are looking like.
Blown out by Penn State and Oregon, but
which I don't think is going to happen.
I don't either.
I think that this team really is just shown that they're taking a step forward, and a lot of it comes off the fact that they had a lot of returning production. They identified key issues that they needed to bring in transfer portal guys, and they did it. And they brought in premier guys. Fernando Mendoza is a future first-round guy if he continues to play like this, and he has the offensive system, the play calling, the receivers in order to continue to elevate. The last part I'd throw in here, I think what really exemplifies the identity of this team is the fact that the first big play that you have is that blocked punt by D'Angelo Pons.
And then he picked it up and scored.
D'Angelo Pons is maybe your best defensive player.
Right.
And he is on punt, blocking a punt. Teams that are able to motivate guys that they're that excited to chase after a punt, despite being an important starter on defense, that stuff to me, it makes me know that they have the culture and the chemistry to succeed. That stuff shows up.
It's tempo.
It shows up in every area later on in the season when it's nut cutting time and it's a late game and you are in a really, really tense situation. That to me stood out, I think, the most.
Well, look, Altmaier responded right after that, and I thought we had a game there.
Yeah.
But, Joe, they had, again, as we just listed off, they would have 8 straight 3-and-outs. 8 straight. And when your defense is on the field that much and you're dominating that much and you sack Altmaier 7 times, I did not see this coming. I just didn't. And Indiana, good on you. I mean, you're just efficient in every level right now, and we'll see how other teams start to attack you. It's going to be very interesting. Yeah. All right. Joe, let's move on to Auburn and Oklahoma here. Joe, this one was the most chaotic game of the weekend for me. Auburn goes into Norman and loses. Joe, I don't even know where we start here, but I kick it off to you. I really don't know what to make of it, but Auburn goes down in Norman. Oklahoma survives.
Yeah, because we already talked about this at the beginning, I kind of think that we don't need to bring it up again. Well, there's no point in reading
clips, just in case for clips, but
I don't think it's necessary to relitigate the penalty stuff was what I was specifically pointing at. I know that it's important to talk about that there were a lot of calls that did not go their way. The Satania touchdown where he looked like he was coming off the field. We could spend an hour on that, Blake. I just want to focus more specifically on these teams and what we learned about these teams.
Yeah.
I think that Oklahoma, to me, Blake, a lot of the stuff that we found out after the Michigan game still remains true. I feel like I didn't really learn anything like really, really new about this Oklahoma team. And what I mean is we saw against Michigan, they're fast, they're physical, they're frightening on defense. And Brent Venables taking over the defensive play calling was the smartest thing that they could have done when they desperately needed that type of energy injected into their defense. The athleticism all over that unit is going to win them games. John Mateer is the best improviser in college football right now. And when things break down and they don't go well, despite his offensive line having a lot of inconsistencies, he keeps that offense alive. And he's a great rusher when their run game can't get going. And I bring that up to say
he is their run game.
He is. So I bring that up to say we were kind of just given the same information we knew after the Michigan game. They still can't run the ball. Blaylock, their number one running back in this game, goes 11 for 13 for 1.2 yards per carry. And it made me start to think, Blake, what is a good example of a team in the past that had similar issues where really talented quarterback who's one of the best in the country, good, really is talented physical quality defense, playmakers, speed at receiver, all that stuff, but they couldn't run the ball and it cost them. And I thought of Miami from last year. And for Oklahoma fans, you want to keep coming in here and saying, like, we don't need to run the ball. We don't need to have a run game. But whatever excuse you want to make, it shit doesn't work. It doesn't work in football. Look at all the teams that advanced to the final 8 in the college football playoff. They all were dominant along the line of scrimmage. They all had quality offensive lines. They all ran the ball well. You can't run the ball well. It's going to catch up to you at some point. This Oklahoma team
catch up
9-3.
4 weeks. It's going to catch up to them the next 4 weeks. I mean, you can't do that.
They could still end up going 9-3, which is totally doable with the talent they have on this roster, but they're going to lose games because they can't run the ball. Plain and simple.
Yeah, I agree. But listen, I thought, look, the 14-point swing is a 14-point swing. And sometimes in seasons, Joe, you got to be more lucky than good. And everybody gets a little bit of luck. But to your point, the longest run that Oklahoma had yesterday was a 9-yard scramble by John Mateer. Okay, that just is not going to cut it. Blaylock being 11 for 13 is not going to cut it. But really and truthfully, their defense was able to get to Jackson Arnold, and I thought half of those sacks of the 10 that they had, which they had 10 sacks, which is absolutely ridiculous. Jackson Arnold created 5 of them by hesitating, not throwing the football, not giving Cam Coleman enough opportunities. Joe, Cam Coleman, I know, had the pass interferences. 3 catches, 88 yards. How are you walking out of Norman with not giving him at least 12 to 15 targets? How? Joe, if they want to bracket him, make them bracket. Make them do whatever. But how many times are you going to run a fade route with them and just say, hey, have at it? Like, I don't understand what Auburn was doing. But I didn't learn a lot from Oklahoma outside of that. I still think they're really good on defense. I still think they do a lot of really good things. I think that you look at Jackson Arnold and the inability to throw the football or the lack of awareness and running into some of those sacks killed them. I think that Oklahoma did not play a good game and still was able to find some luck in some situations, whether it be the Centennial catch, whether it be him running off the field, or whether it be the fumble, all being Isaiah Centennial, ironically, that it was happening with. You got some breaks. But, Joe, the only reason that game and Auburn took the lead, the only reason was because you could not run the football. Let's not forget this. You were the score at one point was 17-16. You were down, and John Mateer had a fantastic drive to ultimately win you the game. But the fact that you couldn't separate as quickly as you could, like, Joe, for example, the punt that Auburn had the issue with, like, you got to capitalize on every one of these situations, and they didn't. I saw 2 teams that, quite honestly, looked anemic running the football. They're trying to throw the ball 32 times with Jackson Arnold, and that's a joke. Actually, 42 dropbacks, Joe, 42 that you had, and he had 10 sacks. Jackson Arnold's not the guy that can go into Norman and throw the ball 42 times. He's not. Jeremiah Cobb, 6 carries, 61 yards. He had a long 40-yard run, and I get that. How are you not going back to him? Auburn, quite frankly, and listen, I hate doing this. Like, you want to give Oklahoma credit for what they did defensively, even offensively with John Mateer. But I got to be real with you. I thought Auburn just flat out lost it. Auburn flat out lost that football game. And look, I know, I guess I technically win the pick'ems because it was 6.5, but it doesn't matter. Like, you literally had a situation where you try to make your entire offensive game plan around Jackson Arnold. How can you do that?
That is what was the most perplexed by, and I think that's where my attention's drawn to is talking about Auburn, because they have a really good defense. I stand by the statements I had in the preview. That defense looked
they got speed.
Very talented, man. They're very, very good defense, and they're great up front, and they're deep. But I don't understand why the philosophy was we need to run Jackson Arnold 1,000,000 times, and we don't need to give Jeremiah Cobb the football. If they actually leaned on Jeremiah Cobb a little bit more, I think the game goes completely differently. I really think that it does. Dude, I mean, this isn't even
Singleton not run a route past 5 yards.
Right. I got to say this. Is this the beginning of the fall off for Hugh? Is this the beginning of him getting fired at the end of the season? Because if they can't, with this type of roster, succeed, there's a serious problem. Jackson Arnold.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Jackson Arnold just doesn't have the inner timer in the pocket to know how to operate when he's going up against a defense that is that fast.
You can't hold the ball again. Joe, he's faced this defense more than anybody in America.
Yeah, he's holding the ball way too much, and that's such a problem for him. He shouldn't be throwing the ball 32 times, and he shouldn't be – I know that there's 10 sacks involved with his 21 carries, but you shouldn't have as many designed carries as you did with him. The decision-making by Hugh Freeze in this was incredibly problematic, and it was a total polar opposite of Venables dominating as the coordinator while Hugh got his ass completely cooked.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, though. They almost just went out there and out-talented them, though. And that's the part. I thought it was coaching malpractice. Look, Oklahoma fans think that we hate him, and we don't. You can't have 35 rushing yards.
No, it doesn't work.
You cannot have 35. You're not going to beat teams by doing that. And look, you got away with it this week. You're not going to get away with it moving forward. I promise you that. All right.
Yeah.
Joe, 2 more before we get out of here. Missouri, South Carolina, the Missouri Tigers hold on. But, Joe, man, the Missouri Tigers under Eli Drinkwitz, the last 30 games, 25-5. The Missouri Tigers just keep on winning.
By the way, I have to say this before we hype up Missouri. I think that this is one of those games for South Carolina. Like, I don't really put anything on them in this. Like, I don't come out of this game thinking, oh, they're screwed. X, Y, and Z problem is such a big issue. That's why they've lost 2 straight games. Getting Sellers back midweek the way that you did, and him still playing as well as he did, and having the big throws that he had in this game, I thought that they still played pretty well. You just got outlasted by another team that is playing with such momentum at the current moment. So specifically to talk about Missouri, it's the same stuff that we keep hyping up and we keep pushing for this Missouri squad. The trio with Probula, with Roberts, and with Hardy is so freaking hard to stop.
Yes.
They are so fantastic together. And the last part that we talked about in the preview, that defense generates so much pressure. They're one of the best teams in the country in havoc rate. That stuff showed up in this game against a South Carolina offensive line that's been quite shaky. I think Missouri is a legit SEC title threat. I think that it is on the table for them to get to the SEC championship game with the schedule that they have.
With the schedule they have, you could be correct. Got to go up against teams like Alabama, A&M. So we'll see there. But Joe, this is another game in the SEC. I thought there was a little coaching malpractice. Let me explain. You just had a game with everything on the line, and Missouri outran you 287 to -9. South Carolina had -9 rushing yards. Let me repeat that again. 287 to -9. Lenore Sellers did not have a rush until the third quarter. A designed quarterback run until the third quarter. Joe, I get you're trying to protect him. I thought he did some elite shit from the pocket. Joe, they tried to make Lenore Sellers beat him from the pocket, and he did. I thought last night's game from him was a stock boost more than anything.
Yeah.
But the tell of this game was I thought Prabula made some massive plays early, right? You're down at halftime, 14-12. You're kind of trading shots here. Lenore's has made some big throws, but they kept leaning and leaning and leaning. And then blanking them in the second half and getting the 11 points that you did ultimately sprung you to winning this game. But you're right. The three-headed monster of Roberts, Hardy, who, Joe, I think teams around the country are hating themselves right now about not thinking that the stature of Ahmad Hardy was a problem. And that kid is a dog, a flat-out dude. And Eli Drinkowitz has done it again. How many times are y'all going to allow Drink and Company to hit on portal backs? How many times? I think Prabula has got to clean some stuff up in the pocket. He was finally tested to the strength that I thought he needed to be tested to. 16 of 27, the interception he got baited on, the corner bailed from another receiver and picked it off. But, Joe, they can cause some issues. Their secondary last night, I thought, got torched by a guy who is not a pocket guy and a guy that normally wants to run the football, and he was able to sit in the pocket and dominate you. They got some pressure on Sellers, which ultimately won them the game. But, look, Missouri's just is going to have another solid year here. But the most dominating thing that they did was not only not getting Lenore Sellers out of the game from running the football, which they didn't call running plays for him either way. Fuller, Attaway, and Faison combined had 19 rushes, or 19 rushing yards. 19. The longest run was for 6 for Fuller, and he only had 2 carries. Joe, if you're not going to run Lenore Sellers, you better be able to run with your backs. And the simple fact that you were able to keep the game as close as you did was spectacular. And it's mainly because of Lenore Sellers' arm. But when you're able to lean on teams and run the football, that's going to continue to win you football games.
Right. They definitely got away from that and trying to establish the run when we knew that running the football is supposed to be what their identity is. So that's definitely a problem. And I think credit to Missouri on the opposite side of that to understanding and leaning into that identity. You had a decent game from Prabula as a passer. And the interception, I think that we got to recognize that pick by Kilgore was just a freaking nuts play. And he was just awesome play by him. Still not a smart throw.
Dude, their safety play is elite. I'm sorry. Yeah. With Attaway, with who was not Attaway? The guy that went to Seattle.
Emmett Worry.
Yeah. And Kilgore. I mean, that's not a bad pick. You got baited, and it is what it is.
My point, though, what I was getting at with Missouri is their ability to just understand our success is going to come from the trio that we've built. I'm very excited by Ahmad Hardy. I think that he, Jeremiah Love, and Justice Haynes are going to be in a 3-way fight for the Doak Walker Award at the end of the year. But them being able to just do that when things aren't super clean throwing the football, that you could just really lock down and grind out yards in physical, tight areas is how they end up winning more games. And there, as we've talked about here, they have a very favorable schedule coming up for them. The next toughest games that they have are going to be against Alabama, against Vanderbilt, against Texas A&M, and against Oklahoma. Those are tough games, but I would argue all of those are accomplishable and winnable. They are all doable for you to come out of those games with wins.
At some point, they're going to have to be, their secondary is going to have to be better. Again, Joe, listen, I don't know how to say this. Lenore Sellers is not a true pocket guy. He's not. And he whipped their ass with a receiver core who, by the way, I don't know if Joe might be the I mean, you're going to face a lot better receivers if you're Missouri and a lot better receiving duos. I look at a team like Bama, though, and just say for Missouri's future, shit. You let Ryan Williams and them get loose, and you're going to find out how bad that secondary is. The fact that they held a team to negative yards rushing is absolutely insane. It's absolute, Joe. They had negative a half a yard per rush. I mean, like,
especially a team like South Carolina of all teams to do that too is.
But Shane Beamer, I got to be honest with you, it should be a strike on the fireable offense. Look, I get Lenore Sellers had a concussion, but we saw a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback a couple of years ago have a concussion, and his cleats, jersey, helmet, everything got put in the College Football Hall of Fame because he had 650 total yards of offense by his damn self. You can't play a kid and be scared to running when that's the strength. You lost the game by not running him. Sorry, it's the truth. I'm sorry, Joe. You gotta
wrong.
If he's going to play, you got to run him. Because what happened? Joe, my man sat back in the pocket and beat their ass. What happens if he starts running the ball?
They needed to be able to activate. They couldn't be so one-sided. That was the problem. If their running backs weren't going to be able to find production, someone had to.
Malpractice.
Yeah.
But before we get to the last game here, if you've noticed, every single game that we've talked about today, the team that won the rushing, the team that had the better rushing attack, won. Go figure. Go figure. How crazy is that? All right. Last one before we get out of here. The Michigan Wolverines go into Nebraska, and with Biff, the new head coach, openly roasting Saban on College game day to start the day, though, turns around and gets him a big win against Nebraska. Joe, your thoughts on the game?
My attention goes right to Nebraska because kind of like what we talked about with Oklahoma, I didn't learn anything super new about Michigan. I knew about Michigan coming into this, that they are the same identity where they run the ball hard. Justin Haynes is a dude. Bryce Underwood's figuring stuff out, and he's getting better, and he is a crazy talented player who the more chances he gets, he's just going to make more highlight reel plays. The rushing touchdown that he had was extremely tremendous. But holy crap, Blake. Nebraska is soft. Unbelievably soft. You're playing in a conference that success is found by the physicality that you establish on both lines of scrimmage. And you got bodied on both sides. You got ran all over by Michigan's running backs and Bryce Underwood. You couldn't stop anything in tight quarters. You're getting completely smoked by pulling offensive linemen, and you're getting completely worked by that Michigan O-line. And you're not getting the necessary push or able to establish the necessary protection for Dylan Raiola to have time to operate in the pocket. I think that this is a huge indictment on where Matt Rhule is at the current moment. I get that he took over a program that was not in a very good state, but it's real troubling to me, Blake, that after this much time at Nebraska, of all places, they haven't been able to find some physical, tough-ass dudes to fill both lines of scrimmage, that this is where we are in week 4 to 2025, and they're getting bodied like that. You should never lose like that at home. That's my big part with this, man. That was an embarrassing loss. So
and where's
a 3-point loss?
Well, where's right. Dane Key, by the way? That's a whole different topic for another day. Yeah, so let's turn there. They got physically dominated up front. Now, the thing is, Joe, but I'm not there with you yet that they're out of this like they're Fugazi. I think Michigan's a better team than people want to give them credit for, and I think they're working through some things throwing the football. The problem was, you're right, they played a little soft. I thought there were some good times that they stopped the run, but Justice Haynes had over 8 yards a carry. Marshall had 13 yards a carry. Bryce Underwood, if you take the sacks out of it, and I don't like doing this, Joe, he had 10 yards a carry. Actually, over that, he had 15.6 yards per carry, sack adjusted. The 37-yard run. It's ridiculous. You got physically bodied by a one-dimensional team without their head coach. You were able to do some good things if you're Nebraska by holding on in some situations. But, Joe, I gotta do this. I got to go back to Michigan. I get the Oklahoma game, but I don't want to just say I'm giving them a mulligan, but I'm going to say I'm giving them a mulligan because I think Bryce Underwood's getting better every single week. And I think that I understand that they have limitations in their receiving core, and they're going to continue. And that is going to be the ultimate thing that hurts them. They had 7 sacks. They got after John Mateer. The first time on the road with a head coach who's going through a lot with a brand new freshman quarterback, Joe, I'm going to give them mulligans like that on the road in the SEC. I am. They got back to what is going to win us this football game. And I got to be real with you. I thought Biff let Bryce Underwood play.
Yeah.
I think more than Sharon Moore, he let him roll. Are there things he's got to clean up? Yes. You also had 5 drops yesterday for Michigan. 5. I look at Bryce Underwood and say to myself, okay, so he's 12 of 22. Well, can you get him you're going to have to give him a better receiving core. I'm sorry. You're just going to have to. But, Joe, they're a one-dimensional team yet again, and they're whipping people's ass up front. And I know the score is 30-27. But if Dylan Raiola is not special, which, Joe, I thought yesterday was the best game that he has ever had in his entire life. He had no time. But he kept making play after play after play. The Barney Hail Mary, and then Barney just in general. I thought, Joe, that they threw back some really big punches. But, man, if you're not going to find a running game for this kid, you can't expect him to be Superman. I look at Michigan and say, man, that front 7 dominated in so many different areas on the road. And what was, I thought, the most hostile situation in the Big Ten yesterday. Mm-hmm. Joe, Nebraska really thought that they were back, and they're 3 points away from getting the win. But, man, you can't get physically dominated like that, especially in the Big Ten, and think you're going to come away with wins.
Yeah, that's the main point for me. To just add to your Michigan thought, I do agree with the sentiment that you have here, that you're starting to see Bryce Underwood improve. And the way that he improves, it's kind of funny to round out the show with how we talked about DJ Lagway. They're doing the complete opposite, where he has a bad game and suddenly you're restricting him more. And now we're in this
loose more.
Yeah, they're letting him play freely, and they're letting him go be an athlete. They're incorporating him effectively as a runner, and he's just going out there making plays. 12 of 22 is nothing that is incredibly sexy. The drops that you mentioned.
Gotta go watch.
Yeah.
Gotta go watch it.
I think that there's more to be had with this team in the future if they can add some effective, impactful receivers. And it'll be easy to recruit good receivers with Bryce Underwood being there. But we just got to be patient. If this team still drops a game that they're not supposed to, or they end up finishing at 9-3 and they're one of the teams that's out of the playoff mix, I think that's a realistic assumption. That was actually what we said during our preseason preview was, hey, Bryce Underwood, the athlete's going to win you some games. Bryce Underwood, the freshman, is going to make some mistakes that hurt you, which happened against Oklahoma. 9-3 is a great year for you, and it establishes a really nice floor for you to surprise teams in the future.
Yeah, I mean, look, you look at what happened. So they're 2 for 3 is Nebraska last night on 4th down. Okay, Joe, they're 2 of 13 on 3rd, and Dylan Raiola didn't have a chance. Here's the truth: he's trying to make too many right reads sometimes too. He's going to have to let this thing rip, because in these games, I will live with the turnover. It's like Lagway last week, as you brought up. I'll live with the turnovers if you can't run the ball. Like, it's what a lot of people did for Garrett a year ago, right? Hey, man, you can't run the ball. So, okay, fine. You're turning the ball over. It is what it is. He's got to let some of these things rip. I thought it was the best game that he had yesterday that we've seen, and it's unfortunate. But you can't get run through like as Saban would say, shit through a tin horn and think you're going to beat anybody, because you got run through with a shit through a tin horn. No. So, look, I'm not completely out of Nebraska either. But, Joe, I mean, they don't have any other wins that they could get here. That
their schedule's too easy. I mean, and I don't think that they run the table and go 11-1. I don't think that happens.
I don't either. Not with that, because here's what's going to happen. Everybody's sending heat on Raiola now.
Yes. Yep.
Everybody's sending heat. And Joe, here's the bad part. 2 of those sacks in the 3rd quarter, 2 of them came on 3-man pressures.
That's my whole point, Blake, is how completely soft that Nebraska offensive line is that they got pushed around.
They have a massive problem at left tackle. I mean,
Yeah.
Brabham, right? Isn't it Brabham?
Barham. Jay Sean Barham. That kid's awesome, by the way. I love watching that kid. They're using him really creatively because he's an off-ball linebacker. They're using him like Jahad Campbell at Alabama last year, where they were just kind of sending him as a heat-seeking missile. So yeah, I mean, there is so much potential there with what they could end up accomplishing for that defense. It's Wink Martindale being the psychopath that he is and having those kinds of weapons. There's a lot of potential.
Well, hold on. That's why Raiola's game was the best, because I thought Martindale showed a lot and then threw a lot at him, and he bailed him out. I mean, the three-man pressure, the reason it happened is because everybody got confused on what to do and they get the sack. That's not on Raiola. It's not on Raiola. I mean, it's not. I mean, he knows what you're trying to do to him. All right, send it. Don't send it. I don't care. I know that this is going to be open, though. So it is what it is. All right, 2 super chats from Elks. Ignore Brian. Thinks Bryce is Stroud 2.0. No, I think he's better.
Yeah, I there's not very many true freshmen who can do some of the things that he does.
No.
I think we gotta give Underwood credit. I know Elks doesn't want to, but we got to give him credit.
That TTUN, that team up north.
Yeah.
And he also says North Fleet, Missouri tight end is super underrated. He's a baller. I agree.
Yeah. No, he had some really nice plays for that team, and there were
the one-handed grab. Dude, that is
they have a great skill position players in Missouri this year. It's awesome.
Yeah, they do. Prabula's got to be a little bit more crisp.
Yeah,
that secondary is cooked. They are cooked.
Yeah, we'll see if that catches up to him. We'll see if it catches up, because the rest of the roster is gifted, very gifted.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bama, the teams that they play, like a team like Bama, do they have Tennessee? I'm not sure.
No, they don't. But so theoretically, they lose to Bama. I think that they beat
A&M.
I think they beat A&M as well.
I'm just saying, like, this is where I was trying to get at just before we leave. Those 2 wide receiving rooms will destroy you. If they can destroy Notre Dame, I mean, they're going to like you faced arguably of the big teams that you played. That's the Joe Norris Sellers. That's the whole thing I was thinking about during the game. I'm like, bro, you're letting a non-pocket guy, like traditionally with this wide receiver core, do this to you? I know.
I slightly push back just a little bit, because Sellers is still insanely talented. So he has the ability to play from Ryan Williams.
But what is Ryan Williams and Bernard? What is the duo of Concepcion and Craver going to do against that secondary? Like, Joe, you're talking about Jacobs. I think he's a good player, but okay.
Yeah.
You better get home. You better get pressure home, and you better get it quick. All right.
I don't disagree.
Lenore Sellers stock went up in a loss. How about that? See y'all tomorrow, man. Peace.